The first woman to call Susannah Mowbray a wallflower did so while standing beneath a glass roof bright enough to expose every unkind smile. London, the 12th May 1856. 3 weeks had passed since Susannah Meriton became Her Grace, the Duchess of Kelminster. Yet the title still seemed to belong more naturally to the servants who announced it than to the woman who bore it. Kelminster House had opened its conservatory that morning for a breakfast honoring patrons of the Metropolitan Botanical Society. Silver coffee urns gleamed beneath palms imported at extravagant cost. White linen softened the long tables. English wallflowers, chosen by Susannah because they could thrive against stone, stood in shallow terracotta bowls along the central walk. Their scent was warm and faintly spicy, modest beside the hothouse orchids that drew most of the attention. Susannah had arranged each grouping herself before the guests arrived. Now she stood beside them in a dove-grey silk gown, while ladies in brighter colours moved around her as though she were another part of the display. "There she is," murmured Lady Penhurst behind a painted fan. "The Wallflower Duchess." The reply came with a small laugh. How fitting, pleasant at the edge, perhaps, but hardly made for the centre. Susannah heard every word. She had spent years learning that people spoke most freely near a quiet woman. Silence did not make her deaf. It merely made others careless. She adjusted the card beneath one of the plants, keeping her shoulders straight and her expression composed. Lady Clementina Fane approached with the easy confidence of a woman who had never entered a room without expecting it to rearrange itself for her. Her cream silk morning dress was embroidered with green vines, and a spray of diamonds trembled at her throat when she smiled. "Your Grace," Clementina said, pausing beside the wallflowers. "What a charming choice. They suit you remarkably well." Susannah met her gaze. "Because they grow where other plants refuse to." Clementina's smile sharpened. "Because they ask so little notice." 2 nearby ladies lowered their cups to hide their amusement. Across the conservatory, a gentleman from the society bent over an orchid and pretended not to listen. Susannah felt the familiar impulse to retreat into stillness. It had protected her through drawing rooms where louder women mistook cruelty for wit. Yet this was her house. Her name had been printed on every invitation. The wallflowers had not been placed there to teach her submission. "Plants that ask for little are often the ones most carelessly misjudged," she said. Clementina tilted her head. "Still, London expects more brilliance from a duchess. London has always confused brilliance with noise." A chair shifted. The light laughter ceased. Susannah did not need to turn to know Everard had entered. His presence changed a room before his voice did. The 9th Duke of Kelminster crossed the tiled floor with unhurried authority. Dark morning coat, cut with severe precision, one hand resting lightly behind his back. At 39, he possessed the kind of composure that encouraged strangers to reveal too much in their haste to impress him. His humor was dry, often unexpected, and usually dangerous to anyone who failed to recognize it in time. He stopped beside Susannah rather than in front of her. "London also once believed tomatoes were poisonous, Lady Clementina," he said. "Its judgment is not beyond revision." The gentleman near the orchid coughed into his hand. Clementina's cheeks colored, though her smile remained. "I intended only admiration, Your Grace. Then my wife has been fortunate to receive it in such an unusual form." His gaze moved to Susannah, and something gentler entered it. The society chairman was asking who prepared the exhibition notes. "I told him he should ask the Duchess herself." I would not wish to occupy his time. He has spent 20 minutes discussing the drainage preferences of a fern. I suspect his time is not urgently claimed. Susannah almost smiled. Almost. Everard offered no hand and made no public show of possession. He merely turned enough to open the circle around her. The chairman, Sir Malcolm Weatherby, approached at once. He was an elderly baronet with silver brows and a habit of addressing women as though their knowledge were an attractive accident. "Your Grace," he said, bowing. "His Grace tells me the arrangement is yours." "The selection is," Susannah replied. Mr. Hale supervised the hothouse specimens. Sir Malcolm gestured toward a nearby pot, an excellent alpine stock. Susannah looked at the narrow leaves, the 4 petals, and the milky bead forming where a careless gardener had broken the stem. "It is not alpine stock." Sir Malcolm blinked. "I beg your pardon?" A young lady reached toward the sap. Susannah moved first, catching the girl gently at the wrist without squeezing. "Please do not touch it. The sap can irritate the skin." She released her at once, then turned the identification card so the guests could see. This specimen was mislabeled during delivery. It belongs with the Spurgers, not the Wallflowers. The hothouse gardener hurried forward, mortified. Sir Malcolm examined the plant and cleared his throat. "Yes, quite right." Susannah said nothing more. The correction required no triumph. Everard watched her with an attention that made the space between her shoulders feel suddenly warm. A fortunate mistake to discover before one of our patrons tested the matter personally, he said. "The Duchess notices what the rest of us overlook." Clementina lowered her eyes to the flowers. "How useful." "Indispensable is the word I had in mind," Everard replied. This time the silence belonged to him. The breakfast continued, but its balance had altered. Guests began asking Susannah questions directly. She answered only those she could answer honestly. She did not pretend knowledge for effect, and she did not soften certainty into apology. When the final carriage rolled away shortly after noon, the conservatory seemed to exhale. Servants cleared cups and folded napkins. Everard was drawn toward the library by 2 political callers who had arrived without invitation. Before leaving, he paused near Susannah. "You handled Clementina better than I did. You compared London to a mistaken gardener. I was being charitable." His mouth curved. "You were being accurate." For a moment neither moved. Then his expression sobered. "Do not let them persuade you that quietness is absence, Susannah." The use of her name unsettled her more than the insult had. "I have had considerable practice resisting persuasion. So I am beginning to understand." He left with the callers, and Susannah remained among the cooling glass and fading breakfast scents. A footman entered, carrying a framed watercolor wrapped in green baize. "From the exhibition committee, Your Grace," Lady Clementina's steward said. "The reframing was completed this morning." Susannah recognized the painting at once. It was her study of wallflowers, growing from a limestone garden wall, painted 2 years earlier from a specimen preserved in her late mother's herbarium. "Place it in my botanical workroom, please." The room adjoined the conservatory and held her pigments, specimen drawers, and the old leather-bound herbarium she had brought from Meryton House. Once the footman departed, Susannah removed the baize. The new gilt frame was elegant, too elaborate for the modest watercolor. She turned it over to inspect the workmanship. 3 brass tacks were darkened with age. The 4th shone like a new coin. The backing bowed outward near one corner. Susannah touched it lightly. Something inside shifted with the dry whisper of folded paper. Her pulse changed. She fetched a narrow palette knife, eased beneath the bright tack, and lifted it without splintering the wood. The backing loosened. A shallow cavity had been cut between the board and frame. Inside lay a folded sheet of heavy ivory paper bearing the embossed crest of Kelminster. Susannah opened it. The first line made the room seem colder. The letter promised that the Duke of Kelminster would suppress evidence of dangerous spinning rooms at Belgrave Mills in exchange for political support and private financial advantage. At the bottom stood Everard's signature. It was exact enough to frighten her. She had seen that hand on household instructions and the brief formal notes he had sent during their engagement, yet the curves were too controlled. The pressure never changed. Susannah carried the letter to the window and tilted it beneath the pale afternoon light. Around the black strokes of Everard's name, a line of tiny holes pierced the paper at regular intervals. Someone had not written the signature. Someone had built it. By the next morning, Susannah had slept little and trusted the letter even less. Dawn entered the botanical workroom in a narrow grey band, catching on glass specimen jars, labelled drawers, and the pale edge of the folded sheet she had left beneath a clean blotter. She had not moved it after midnight, except to place a sheet of tissue beneath it. The altered frame remained on the long table, where she had opened it, its backing lifted, the bright brass tack beside the others. Nothing had been burned, torn, or hidden. She wanted every mark preserved exactly as she had found it. At 7:30, before the household gathered for breakfast, she returned with a magnifying lens, 2 scraps of drawing paper, and the small needle she used when transferring botanical outlines. The forged signature waited at the bottom of the letter, elegant and false. Susannah tilted the page toward the window. The punctures were too regular. A hand-pricked outline wandered by fractions, because fingers breathed, paused, and corrected. These holes marched with mechanical patience. She laid a scrap sheet over a simple sketch of a leaf and pricked the line by hand. The spacing changed where the curve tightened. Then she dusted charcoal across it. A broken outline appeared beneath. The method was old, common, and useful. Artists used it. Decorative painters used it. Any careful apprentice could understand it, yet the letter's signature had not been copied by the same hand. The holes were identical distances apart, as if a toothed wheel had rolled across a traced name. She turned her attention to the ducal crest. It appeared formal enough at first glance, but no wax lay on the page. The design had been pressed directly into the paper. She ran one fingertip beside the raised edge without touching the center. Dry embossing. Someone had used a brass die. Someone had possessed both the means to copy Everard's signature and the authority or audacity to reproduce the Kelminster crest. A knock sounded at the open door. Mrs. Greaves, the housekeeper, stood in the passage. "His Grace has asked whether your Grace will join him in the small breakfast room." Susannah covered the letter with tissue. "Please tell him I must speak with him first, privately, but with witnesses nearby." Mrs. Greaves's expression did not change, though her eyes flicked once toward the altered frame. "At once, Your Grace." Everard arrived less than 5 minutes later with Mr. Bell, the ducal solicitor, and Hawthorne, the butler. He had not dressed for callers. His dark coat was plain, his cravat tied without ornament, and the faint shadow beneath his eyes told Susannah that political papers had likely kept him awake after the breakfast. He entered quickly, then stopped when he saw her face. "What has happened?" "I found something behind the watercolor frame." She did not touch the letter yet. "The frame returned yesterday." after Lady Clementina's committee arranged for it to be altered. Everard's gaze moved to the raised backing, the loose tack, and the folded tissue. The humour that usually softened his severity vanished. "Show me." Susannah looked at Mr. Bell. "I want the condition witnessed before it leaves this room." The solicitor inclined his head. "That is prudent, Your Grace." Hawthorne remained just inside the doorway. Susannah removed the tissue and lifted the letter by its edges. She explained where it had been concealed, which tack had appeared new, how the backing had bowed, and the exact order in which she had opened it. No one interrupted. When she finished, Everard read the letter once. His face did not pale, it hardened by degrees. The accusation touched more than reputation. It suggested he had agreed to suppress reports of dangerous spinning rooms at Belgrave Mills, where long hours and poor ventilation had already drawn concern from reformers. The letter implied private gain in return. "This is not mine," he said. "No." Mr. Bell looked from the signature to Susannah. "Your Grace, may I ask how you reached that conclusion?" Everard answered before she could. "You may ask how the Duchess reached it. You may not ask whether she forged it." The solicitor's brows rose slightly. "I had no intention of doing so." "Then we understand one another." Susannah felt the tension in her chest shift, though it did not leave. Everard turned to her. "What did you see? Not what do you suspect? Not what are you afraid of? What did you see?" She placed the letter beneath the window light and pointed without touching the ink. The signature was transferred. "These punctures follow the strokes." Mr. Bell leaned closer. "Pricked by hand? No, a hand does not keep such even spacing through a curve." She brought forward the scrap leaf she had prepared. "This is hand-pricked. The intervals change where the line turns. Whoever copied His Grace's signature used a toothed instrument, likely a pounce wheel." Everard studied the two patterns. "And the crest? Dry embossed. There is no wax residue and no seal impression from a ring or desk stamp. A brass die pressed it directly into the paper." Hawthorne's breath sounded once in the doorway, then ceased. Mr. Bell examined the page without lifting it. "The paper appears genuine." "It may be," Susannah said. "That would make the forgery stronger." A political adviser arrived before the explanation ended, summoned by Everard's earlier messages regarding the mills. Sir Edwin Marsh was shown into the room and halted at the sight of the open frame. He listened impatiently, then gave a dismissive glance toward Susannah's demonstration. "With respect, Your Grace, ladies drawing tricks hardly establish political fraud." Everard turned so slowly that Sir Edwin's confidence faltered before the Duke spoke. "The Duchess has identified a false signature, a manufactured crest, and a concealed document before breakfast. You have identified only your own impatience. She will finish." Silence settled over the workroom. Susannah did not thank him. Gratitude would have reduced the moment to rescue. And this was not rescue. It was recognition. She completed her explanation, noting that the letter should not be handled further until its condition and custody were recorded. Mr. Bell removed a red leather portfolio from his case. Before he opened it, Susannah held the letter above the tissue. Everard stepped nearer, then paused. "May I steady the lower edge?" he asked. The question was quiet enough that only those closest could hear. Susannah nodded. He placed 2 fingers beneath the paper without closing them over hers. The contact lasted only a moment, yet it felt deliberate in a way that unsettled her more than an accidental touch would have done. Together, they lowered the sheet into the portfolio. Mr. Bell folded the protective tissue over it, closed the cover, threaded red tape through the fastening, and applied his seal. He then signed across the closure and asked Everard and Hawthorne to witness the entry in his custody book. "The original remains with me from this moment," he said. "No advisor, servant, or family member receives it without a written transfer." "Agreed," Everard replied. He looked toward the frame. "That stays exactly as it is." Mr. Bell nodded. "I will have it placed in the locked evidence cupboard adjoining your study. The cupboard key remains with me until further notice." Susannah watched Hawthorne carry the frame only after the solicitor had marked its condition and wrapped it in plain cloth. The watercolor itself remained in the workroom, removed from the altered frame, and laid flat beneath clean tissue. Everard stood beside the empty space on the table. "The letter refers to Belgrave Mills," he said. "A committee vote is expected within the month. If this reaches the newspapers, it will appear that I sold the inquiry before it began. Then whoever placed it expected more than discovery." Susannah touched the hand-pricked leaf on her scrap paper. "They expected circulation." Mr. Bell closed his custody book. "We should examine the household stationery records. A forged signature is one problem. Genuine ducal paper would be another." By 10 o'clock, the archive clerk had brought the inventory from the old dispatch room. The entries were neat, dated, and complete until the final count. 6 sheets were missing from a batch of Kelminster paper, ordered 2 years earlier. Beside the original receipt stood the initials of the man who had once supervised diplomatic correspondence for the Duke. Quentin Varden. The initials beside the missing stationery did not prove guilt, but they changed the air in the archive room. By the morning of the 14th of May, every drawer in the old dispatch office had been counted twice. Every packet of ducal paper matched against purchase records, and every former custodian named in Mr. Bell's notes. The forged letter remained sealed inside the solicitor's red leather portfolio, which had not left his possession since the previous morning. The altered frame rested in the locked evidence cupboard adjoining Everard's study. The watercolor itself lay safely in Susannah's botanical workroom beneath clean tissue, untouched and undamaged. Nothing had moved without a record. That order should have comforted her. Instead, the neatness of it revealed how carefully the lie had been prepared. Susannah stood at the long archive table while the current secretary, Mr. Keene, turned another page of the inventory. Dust softened the room's dark shelves, but the paper before them was crisp. The batch was delivered in September of 1854, Mr. Keene said. 100 sheets, all bearing the Kelminster chain line and watermark. Everard remained at Susannah's right, not looming over the table, yet close enough that she could feel the restraint in him. Mr. Bell sat opposite with his notebook open. "And the final count?" the solicitor asked. 94 sheets when responsibility passed to me. "Was the discrepancy reported?" "No, sir. Lord Quentin's notation says 6 were spoiled during copying." Susannah looked down at the entry. The ink had faded evenly with the rest. The explanation appeared ordinary, too ordinary. "Were spoiled sheets usually destroyed?" she asked. Mr. Keene nodded. "Yes, Your Grace. Torn through the watermark and burned under supervision." "Is there a record of that destruction?" He searched the adjacent column, then another page. "No." Everard's expression hardened. "There should be." "Yes, Your Grace." Susannah traced the printed ruling beside the entry without touching the ink. Who had access to the batch? Lord Quentin Varden, his undersecretary, and the dispatch clerk. The undersecretary died last winter. The dispatch clerk left service in 1855 and now lives in Richmond. Mr. Bell wrote both facts down. No evidence of a break-in after Mr. Keene took charge. None. Susannah examined one genuine sheet from the surviving batch. It had been removed from a sealed packet in their presence and recorded before the string was cut. She held it toward the window. Fine vertical lines ran through the paper, crossed by wider chains at regular intervals. Near the lower edge, the watermark emerged like a pale ghost. "The forged letter used this paper," she said. Everard looked at Mr. Bell. "Can you confirm that without opening the portfolio here?" "Not conclusively. I can compare them later in controlled light without breaking the custody record unnecessarily." Susannah lowered the genuine sheet. "The chain lines looked the same yesterday. I remember the wider spacing near the lower fold." Mr. Keene glanced at her with surprise. Everard noticed. "My wife remembers paper as you remember political names," he told the secretary. "It is best not to underestimate either skill." The words were lightly spoken, but Susannah heard what lay beneath them. He was not defending her merely because someone had doubted her. He was stating a fact he had accepted. That difference mattered. Mr. Bell closed the inventory. "We have access, opportunity, and missing material. We do not yet have proof that Lord Quentin removed the sheets." "Then we do not accuse him," Susannah said. Everard's gaze met hers. "No, we let him speak." The opportunity arrived before noon. Quentin Varden sent no card ahead of him. He appeared at Kelminster House with the polished ease of a man accustomed to being admitted by former privilege. Hawthorne announced him in the drawing-room, where the doors remained open and a footman stood beyond the threshold. Quentin was handsome in a precise, bloodless way, with pale eyes and a mouth trained to suggest sympathy without surrendering control. He bowed to Susannah first. "Your Grace, I hope I am not intruding." "You are calling without notice," Everard said. "That generally answers the question." Quentin smiled as though the rebuke amused him. "I heard troubling whispers concerning Belgrave Mills. I thought my knowledge of your former correspondence might be useful." "Whispers travel quickly," Susannah said. He turned toward her, particularly when reformers are eager for scandal. "What scandal have you heard?" A pause, brief but real. "Only that certain documents may be circulating." Everard leaned against the mantel, one hand resting near the marble edge. His posture looked casual. Susannah had begun to recognize it as the position he adopted when he wanted another man to mistake stillness for ease. "No documents are circulating," he said. "Then I am relieved." Quentin's eyes moved toward the conservatory doors. "I trust the Duchess's wallflower painting was delivered safely. Lady Clementina spoke of it with great enthusiasm." Susannah let the silence lengthen by one breath. The painting's return had not been announced. The exhibition committee had corresponded with her secretary about its eventual delivery to the Winter Garden, but no public notice had stated that it had already arrived at Kelminster House. "Which delivery do you mean?" she asked. Quentin's fingers adjusted one cuff. "The reframed work, naturally." "Naturally," she allowed a small smile. "It required adjustment. Nothing serious, I hope." "That depends on the quality of the workmanship." His gaze sharpened. "Lady Clementina assured me she used a reputable craftsman." Everard spoke before Quentin could ask more. "You seem unusually informed about botanical framing." "Clementina has made the exhibition her chief occupation. One cannot dine in her company without learning the fate of every fern in London." "And every painting?" Susannah asked. Quentin laughed. "You are very exact, Your Grace. So I have been told." He shifted the conversation toward Belgrave Mills, offering names of investors, committee members, and newspaper proprietors who might exploit the Duke's position. The information was plausible and carefully incomplete. Quentin advised immediate silence. He suggested that any unusual paper connected to Kelminster should be dismissed as crude fabrication before it reached public attention. Susannah listened without asking another direct question. Each time silence opened, Quentin filled it. He spoke of forged rumors before anyone had used the word forged. He warned against allowing artistic peculiarities to become the subject of public argument. He mentioned the exhibition twice more. By the time he rose to leave, he had revealed no crime. He had revealed fear. At the threshold, he bowed to Susannah. "I hope your painting suffers no lasting harm." "Paintings are often more durable than the people who handle them," she replied. Quentin's smile held, but only at the corners. Hawthorne escorted him out. Everard waited until the sound of the front door had faded. Then he looked at Susannah. "I have attended interrogations conducted with threats, bribes, and 3 kinds of diplomatic outrage." His mouth curved. "I have never seen one conducted by asking almost nothing." He wanted to know whether we had found the letter. And now? Now he knows only that the frame required adjustment. Everard's expression warmed with unmistakable admiration. "You made him fear a sentence you never spoke." The pleasure of that recognition moved through her before she could guard against it. Quietness has its uses. I am beginning to think. London has been criminally wasteful. A servant entered carrying a silver tray. Upon it lay a folded message bearing Lady Clementina Fane's seal. Susannah opened it. Clementina wished to know why the reframed watercolor had not yet been sent to the exhibition pavilion, and whether its delay would inconvenience the press viewing. Susannah handed the note to Everard. "She knows it is still here, or Quentin told her before leaving." Mr. Bell, who had remained in the adjoining room, stepped forward. "How would your Grace like to reply?" Susannah moved to the escritoire and selected a plain sheet. "The frame is being adjusted. The painting will arrive in due course." Everard watched her write. Nothing more. If she wants certainty, she may earn it by making another mistake. She sanded the note, folded it, and gave it to Hawthorne for delivery. Only after the servant left did she return to the altered frame, now still locked in the evidence cupboard under Mr. Bell's control. They could not examine it without recording the access. So the solicitor opened the cupboard, noted the time, and removed the wrapped frame in their presence. Susannah studied the back without touching the sealed cavity. Near the lower rail, almost erased beneath varnish dust, lay a pencil mark no longer than her thumbnail. 3 letters and a number. H. R27. Mr. Bell copied them exactly. Everard looked toward the solicitor. "A maker's mark." Susannah shook her head. "More likely a workshop notation." She had seen similar marks on artists' panels and repaired frames. There are frame makers in Soho who number alterations by order. Everard's eyes settled on the faint inscription. "Then tomorrow we discover who made room for a lie behind my wife's painting." On the morning of the 15th of May, Susannah carried only a copied notation into Soho. The altered frame remained where Mr. Bell had placed it, wrapped and locked in the evidence cupboard adjoining Everard's study. The forged letter remained sealed inside the solicitor's red leather portfolio. Neither object left Kelminster House. The 3 characters copied from the frame's lower rail, HR27, were enough to begin. Susannah travelled in a closed carriage with her lady's maid opposite her, Mr. Bell beside the door, and a footman seated outside. The streets narrowed as they moved south and east from Mayfair. Fashionable stone gave way to painted shop fronts, crowded windows, delivery carts, and workrooms where gilders, print sellers, cabinet makers, and frame makers conducted their trades above or behind modest signs. Everard had chosen not to enter the shop with them. His rank might make a tradesman eager to agree before he understood the question. Instead, he had ridden in a second-hand carriage and would wait around the corner until Mr. Bell sent word that his presence was needed. Susannah understood the restraint. She also understood that Everard disliked it. The frame-maker's premises occupied 2 cramped rooms filled with lengths of carved wood, gilded corners, backing boards, and the dry scent of glue. A man in a brown apron emerged from behind a workbench. His eyes moved first to Mr. Bell, then to Susannah, and finally to the footman visible through the open doorway. He bowed too late and too deeply. "Your Grace, I had no notice." "That was intentional," Susannah said. "We require an accurate memory, not a prepared one." The frame-maker swallowed. Mr. Bell placed the copied notation on the counter. "Do you recognize this mark?" The man leaned over it. "HR is ours. The number belongs to an alteration order." "For a botanical watercolor?" Susannah asked. "Wallflowers against pale stone?" Recognition crossed his face before caution replaced it. "Yes, Your Grace." He reached toward a shelf, then stopped. "May I fetch the order book?" "Please do," Mr. Bell said. The book was broad, leather-bound, and stained along its edges by years of workshop use. The frame-maker laid it open near the end of April. His finger moved down a ruled page until it reached number 27. The entry named the Metropolitan Botanical Society Exhibition Committee as the client. Beneath it appeared an instruction written in a second hand. Add shallow recess behind backing. Space sufficient for prize certificate. No visible hinge. Retain original face dimensions. Susannah read the line twice. Who gave that instruction? The lady's steward brought it. Which lady? Lady Clementina Fane. His answer came quietly. Her steward said the certificate was to be concealed until the judging. Mr. Bell looked at the page. Was that unusual? Not impossible. Gentlemen sometimes hide presentation papers in commemorative frames. Yet this was a watercolor, not a portrait of public office. I thought it odd. You accepted the work. I was paid to accept it. There was no defiance in the reply, only the tired honesty of a tradesman aware that a duchess could ruin him without raising her voice. Susannah did not want fear to shape his account. You are not accused of knowing what would be placed there. His shoulders lowered slightly. Thank you, Your Grace. Who collected the frame? Lady Clementina's exhibition steward. Did anyone else inspect it before collection? The frame maker hesitated. Mr. Bell did not prompt him. Susannah waited. Silence had already made Quentin careless once. It worked differently on honest men. It gave them room to decide whether truth was safer than concealment. Lord Quentin Varden came 2 days before the collection, the man said at last. He asked whether the recess altered the outer measurements. Mr. Bell's pencil moved across his notebook. Did he explain his interest? He said he was advising on transport. Did he touch the frame? Susannah asked. Only the back. He measured the opening with a folding rule. Then he compared it with a sheet of paper he carried. The frame maker lifted both hands, indicating width. He wanted to know if the paper would lie flat without showing through the backing. Did you see the paper? No writing. It was folded inside another sheet. Susannah looked toward the lengths of carved molding along the wall. You saw something else. The man stared at her. Why do you say that? because you described the rule, the paper, and the recess. Yet you have not explained the graphite smudge beside the entry. His gaze dropped to the order book. A dark crescent stained the margin beside number 27. Lord Quentin had a wheel. What sort of wheel? Narrow, steel, mounted in a wooden handle. He rolled it over a scrap while waiting for me to finish measuring. Susannah felt the mystery tightened into shape. Did it cut? It made small holes, evenly spaced. A pounce wheel, she said. That may have been the name. I asked if he was marking leather. He said it was for transferring borders. Mr. Bell looked at her. The same sort of instrument that could transfer a signature, if the spacing matched. She turned back to the frame maker. Do you still have the scrap? No, Your Grace. It went into the stove with the sweepings. The loss disappointed her, but it did not break the chain. A burned workshop scrap could not return. Its absence would remain an absence. Who made the wheel? She asked. I could not say. But Lord Quentin mentioned sending the handle back to an engraver in Clerkenwell. He complained that one tooth caught. Did he name the engraver? No. He did mention a brass die being finished under the same commission. Mr. Bell's gaze sharpened. A die of what design? I did not see it. The frame maker closed his mouth, then opened it again. There may be another mark. He crossed to a rack and removed a narrow wooden fitting pattern used to check frame depths. Faint pencil lines and numbers covered the surface. When we altered the recess, I recorded the requested depth here. Lord Quentin pressed his folded paper against the pattern. His graphite left an edge. Susannah bent over the wood. A pale rectangular impression remained, too faint for direct copying. She asked for thin tracing paper and a graphite stick. With the frame maker's permission, she laid the paper across the pattern and rubbed lightly. The hidden rectangle emerged. Its measurements matched a standard folded letter. At one corner, a partial set of initials appeared where another note had impressed the wood. QV the frame maker looked ill. I never noticed that. You had no reason to, Susannah said. Mr. Bell prepared a formal extract from the order book and read it aloud. The frame maker corrected one date, then signed beneath the amended copy. The original order book remained on his counter. Mr. Bell took only the certified extract and the tracing, each placed in separate paper covers and marked with the time. Before leaving, Susannah asked one final question. Where would a gentleman commission a brass die fine enough to reproduce an aristocratic crest? The frame maker rubbed his thumb against his apron. Clerkenwell. There are several engravers there, but only a few would take such work without asking to see authority. One of them uses the initials BC on his accounts. Lord Quentin said the man was troublesome about payment. Outside, the footman opened the carriage door. Susannah had just settled beside her maid when Mr. Bell sent his clerk around the corner. Everard's carriage appeared moments later, stopping behind theirs without spectacle. He did not enter Susannah's carriage. Instead, he leaned near the open door while Mr. Bell gave him the essential facts in a low voice. Clementina's steward had ordered the cavity. Quentin had inspected it. He had carried a pounce wheel. He had spoken of a brass die. Everard listened without interruption. The original order book, he asked. Still with the frame maker, Mr. Bell replied. I have a witnessed extract. The tracing is sealed separately. Good. His gaze moved to Susannah. A dark streak crossed the inside of her wrist where the graphite stick had brushed her glove and skin. You have brought part of the workshop back with you. She glanced down. Only dust. Everard lifted his hand, then stopped before touching her. May I? The question was quiet. Her maid looked toward the opposite window. Mr. Bell studied his papers. Susannah extended her wrist. Everard touched one fingertip beside the graphite mark, not rubbing it away, merely indicating it. The contact was warm and brief. "Evidence has developed a habit of choosing you," he said. "Evidence does not choose. People fail to notice it. Then perhaps it has chosen the only person who will." Something in his voice made the crowded Soho street seem distant. Susannah withdrew her hand slowly, not because she wanted distance, but because remaining still beneath that touch would have revealed too much. Everard straightened. "We return to Kelminster House. Tomorrow we visit Clerkenwell." Mr. Bell closed his case. "And the frame-maker?" "He is protected as a witness," Everard said. Then he looked at Susannah. "Provided the Duchess agrees." Susannah did. For the first time since the letter had fallen from behind her painting, the conspiracy no longer felt like a shadow without shape. It had hands now. One had ordered the hiding place. The other had measured it. Somewhere in Clerkenwell, a craftsman might know who had given those hands the tools to manufacture a duke's betrayal. By 10 o'clock on the 16th of May, the narrow streets of Clerkenwell had begun to fill with carts, apprentices, and the metallic rhythm of workshops opening for the day. Susannah sat beside Everard in the closed carriage, while her lady's maid occupied the opposite seat, and Mr. Bell reviewed the certified extract from the Soho frame-maker. The original forged letter remained sealed in the solicitor's red leather portfolio at Kelminster House. The altered frame remained locked in the evidence cupboard adjoining Everard's study. Only copies, measurements, and witnessed notes travelled with them. Everard had insisted upon that order before breakfast. "One lie has already crossed too many thresholds," he had said. "The evidence will not do the same without a record." The engraver's shop stood behind a modest blue door beneath a brass plate marked B. Cross Dicinca and ornamental engrave. Inside, shallow drawers lined the walls, each labelled in a careful hand. Steel punches, unfinished seals, and small brass plates lay beneath glass. The air smelled of lamp oil, metal dust, and charcoal. Mr. Cross was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, with magnifying lenses pushed above his brow and dark filings caught in the creases of his fingers. He bowed when Everard entered, though his attention shifted uneasily towards Susannah. Your Grace, Mr. Bell, you know why we have come?" Everard asked. "I can guess." Mr. Cross looked toward the locked cabinet behind his workbench. "Lord Quentin Varden commissioned work from me in February." Mr. Bell opened his notebook. "Describe it from the beginning." The engraver drew a slow breath. He brought an impression taken from Kelminster stationery, not a seal in wax, an embossed crest. He asked for a brass die that would reproduce the pressure closely enough for private invitations. Everard's face remained calm. "Did he show written authority from me?" "No, Your Grace." "And you accepted the commission?" "I did." Mr. Cross did not hide behind excuses. He had served in your household. He knew the correct dimensions, the motto, and the inner line beneath the coronet. "I believed he still acted for you." "What made you stop believing it?" Susannah asked. Mr. Cross turned to her. "The second commission." He opened a drawer and removed an account book, but kept it on his side of the bench, a steel tracing wheel with teeth set closer than those used for leather or dress patterns. "Lord Quentin said he wanted to transfer decorative borders onto formal papers." "Did he specify the spacing?" "To the fraction." Susannah placed the Soho frame-maker's tracing on the counter without surrendering it. "Would that spacing produce marks like these, Mr.?" Cross leaned closer, adjusted his lenses, and studied the faint line. Yes, near enough that I would want to compare the wheel itself before swearing to it. "Where is the wheel?" Everard asked. The engraver glanced again toward the cabinet. "Here." The room became very still. Mr. Bell's pencil paused over the page. Susannah heard the distant scrape of a cart outside and the softer sound of her maid settling her gloves. Everard did not move toward the cabinet. "Why?" he asked. "Lord Quentin returned both tools 3 days ago. He said the die had left a roughness in the lower scroll, and one tooth on the wheel caught during use. He ordered me to clean them, correct them, and destroy them afterward." "Destroy them," Susannah repeated. Those were his exact words. Mr. Cross looked ashamed now, but not evasive. He had not paid the balance. "I do not destroy unpaid work, nor did I care for the urgency of his request." Mr. Bell stepped forward. "The tools have remained in your possession since he returned them, locked there. No one else has handled them." "Do not open the cabinet yet," the solicitor said. "Not until we establish a witnessed inventory." Mr. Cross nodded. Susannah looked at the account book. "May we see the entry?" He turned it around without lifting it from the bench. The commission appeared under Quentin's name, with the date, dimensions, and price. Beside the die was a small drawn crest. Beside the wheel was a notation for tooth spacing. A later entry recorded their return for correction and destruction. Quentin's signature stood beneath it. Did he explain why he wanted the tools destroyed after correction? Susannah asked. "He said no duplicate of a private ducal design should remain in a tradesman's possession." Everard's mouth curved without humor, a concern that arrived remarkably late. Mr. Cross lowered his eyes. "Yes, Your Grace." Mr. Bell examined the original entry, but did not remove the book. He prepared a certified copy while Mr. Cross watched. The engraver corrected the spelling of one technical term, then signed the extract. Only after the time, witnesses, and cabinet condition had been entered did Mr. Cross unlock the door. Inside lay a wrapped brass die and a narrow steel wheel mounted in a dark wooden handle. He did not hand them to Everard. He placed them on a felt pad behind the counter. Susannah bent near enough to see without touching. The die bore the Kelminster coronet, motto, and inner border. One lower scroll showed a faint burr. The steel wheel had teeth set with mechanical precision. "Can it be tested without altering the object?" she asked. "On scrap paper, yes." Mr. Bell raised one hand. "Not today. We have no authority yet to transfer possession, and any test must be witnessed and recorded." Everard nodded. "Then they remain here." Mr. Cross appeared surprised. "You do not wish to take them, Your Grace." "Wishing is not custody." Everard looked toward Mr. Bell. "Arrange proper witnesses. Until then, Mr. Cross will lock the cabinet and you will seal the door." The solicitor applied a narrow paper seal across the cabinet lock, signed it, and had Mr. Cross and the maid witness the act. The tools remained inside. Nothing was removed. Before they left, Mr. Bell produced another paper from his case. "A broker answered my inquiry this morning." He handed the memorandum first to Everard, then to Susannah. Quentin held a substantial interest in Belgrave Mills through 2 intermediaries. The investment had been purchased on credit. If the inquiry exposed unsafe conditions and forced costly alterations, his position could collapse. A second line identified a trust associated with the Fane family. Its income depended upon dividends from the same consortium. Susannah read the names twice. Clementina did not merely arrange the frame. "No," Everard said. "Her family stood to lose money if the mills were examined honestly." Mr. Cross looked from one face to another. "I did not know any of this." That is why you will say only what you do know, Susannah told him. The rest belongs to those who planned it. The return carriage moved slowly through afternoon traffic. Mr. Bell rode separately with the certified copies, leaving Susannah, Everard, and her maid together. For several minutes neither spoke. The noise of Clerkenwell softened behind them. Everard watched the passing streets through the glass. "My father would have paid Quentin," he said at last. Susannah turned toward him. His tone was light, almost careless, but the fingers resting on his knee had gone still. "The late Duke? He believed scandal was afire. Smother it quickly, and no one need ask what burned beneath. Did it work? For him?" Everard's smile held no amusement. The smoke settled on everyone else. He looked at her then. Servants dismissed. Advisers blamed. Women persuaded that silence was loyalty. He preserved the name and damaged nearly every person who carried it. Susannah understood why he joked when danger approached. Humor allowed him to stand near fear without naming it. "You are not your father." That is a generous judgment after 3 weeks of marriage. "It is an unfinished one." His brows lifted. "You do have a talent for comfort." "Comfort is not always kindness." She held his gaze. "Humor can make a room easier to survive. It cannot make a lie true, and it cannot make fear harmless." The carriage rocked gently over uneven stones. Everard looked down at his hand. Then he turned it palm upward on the seat between them. He did not reach for her. He simply left the choice open. "I do not want you carrying shame that belongs to me," he said, "or to my father, or to any man who believes your quietness makes you convenient." Susannah looked at his waiting hand. Her maid had turned toward the window, giving them the privacy propriety allowed without pretending they were alone. Susannah placed her fingers in Everard's palm. He closed his hand carefully, without possession, and held hers through the long turn toward Mayfair. Neither spoke again until Kelminster House came into view. The silence was no longer empty. It had become a promise neither of them was ready to name. By the morning of the 17th May, the danger had acquired respectable voices. 3 advisers gathered in Everard's study beneath portraits of dead Mowbrays, and urged caution with the solemnity of men recommending sacrifice on someone else's behalf. The forged letter remained sealed inside Mr. Bell's red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained wrapped in the locked evidence cupboard adjoining the study, its condition recorded and its key still under the solicitor's control. Susannah's watercolor lay undamaged in her botanical workroom, waiting for a clean frame. Nothing physical had changed since their return from Clerkenwell. Everything around it had. Rumors concerning Belgrave Mills had begun moving through political clubs. The Metropolitan Botanical Society had confirmed that several newspaper men would attend the exhibition opening. Sir Edwin Marsh stood near the hearth, one hand tucked into his coat. The simplest course is to withdraw the painting and excuse Her Grace from the opening. Susannah sat beside the window, not at the far end of the room where Sir Edwin's glance kept placing her. Everard stood behind his desk, reading the Society's latest message. "Simplest for whom?" he asked. Sir Edwin hesitated. "For the protection of the Duchess and the inquiry." "Those are not necessarily the same thing." Another adviser, Lord Amberley, leaned forward. "If Lady Clementina expects the picture and it does not appear, she may suspect the concealment has been discovered." Susannah looked at him. "She will suspect that whether I attend or not." Sir Edwin's impatience surfaced. "With respect, Your Grace, public curiosity is not gentle. A quiet withdrawal could spare you considerable unpleasantness." A quiet withdrawal would also tell London that I fear examination. London already calls you retiring. London may call me what it pleases. It will not decide where I am permitted to stand. The room went still. Everard lowered the message. His expression did not reveal surprise, but she saw something in his eyes that had not been there 3 weeks earlier. Not approval granted from above. Recognition offered across level ground. The watercolor will be exhibited, he said. In a new frame, Mr. Bell added from the writing table. The altered one does not leave custody. Susannah nodded. The backing must be plain and newly cut. No hidden recess. The frame maker should sign the reverse and date the work. Mr. Bell made a note. Sir Edwin looked from her to Everard, and her Grace. Everard turned to Susannah rather than answering for her. You may avoid the opening if you wish. I will not regard it as retreat. The offer was sincere. That made refusal more difficult, not less. I will attend, Susannah. His voice softened, though the advisers remained present. There will be reporters. Clementina may provoke a scene. That is precisely why I must be there. If she sees the painting removed and me absent, she will know we found what was hidden. If society sees the same, it will assume I am ashamed of something. You are not obliged to prove courage to people who insult you over breakfast. No, I am obliged to prevent them from turning my absence into their evidence. Everard studied her for a long moment. Then he gave one decisive nod. Very well. Sir Edwin opened his mouth. Everard raised a hand. Her Grace has answered. The adviser closed it again. Susannah asked Mr. Bell for the preliminary list of those permitted inside the Winter Garden before the opening. The society had recorded gardeners, exhibitors, porters, committee members, and 2 press representatives granted early access by Lady Clementina. 2? Susannah asked. The earlier notice named none. Mr. Bell passed her the amended sheet. The additions were made yesterday. Clementina was preparing an audience. Susannah read the names, but did not recognize either journalist. She asked that the trustees identify which door each early entrant would use, who held temporary keys, and whether any handbills or printed catalogues had already been delivered. Sir Edwin gave a quiet sigh. Surely the society can manage its own pavilion. Susannah lifted her eyes. The society managed my frame. Everard's mouth twitched, a point of some distinction. By the time the advisers departed, arrangements had been made for 2 discreet Kelminster footmen to attend in ordinary livery, one near the entrance and one near Susannah's display. Everard proposed adding 4 more servants. Susannah refused. I will not enter a flower exhibition surrounded like a threatened sovereign. 2 men cannot control a crowd. Then let the society control its guests. Your servants should observe, not intimidate. I would prefer more, I know. Their gazes held. Everard exhaled through his nose. 2 footmen. Hawthorne will remain near the carriage. Mr. Bell will attend with the evidence copies, not the originals. Agreed. And if someone accuses you publicly, you will not answer before I do. The request struck him harder than her refusal of the guards. You expect me to remain silent while they attack you. I expect you to stand beside me, not in front of me. The memory of their joined hands in the carriage seemed to move between them. Everard looked toward the closed door through which the advisers had gone. I have spent most of my life believing those were the same position. They are not. No, he said, I am beginning to understand that. Lady Clementina arrived that afternoon under the pretense of discussing exhibition flowers. She was received in the drawing-room with doors open and a maid seated near the window. Her pale green dress carried the same measured elegance as her smile. "I feared you might withdraw your charming picture," she said. "There has been such unnecessary agitation over Belgrave Mills." Susannah poured tea without offering her the reassurance she sought. "What agitation?" Clementina lifted one shoulder. "Political agitation. His Grace's committee has many enemies. You believe the danger is political?" A tiny pause followed. Clementina reached for her cup. "What other sort could it be?" "You sent my painting to a frame maker for the exhibition, and now you arrive to ask whether I will withdraw it because of political danger." Clementina smiled, but the expression had become effortful. "My dear Duchess, everything connected to a duke becomes political eventually, including wallflowers, especially when a duchess insists upon standing beside them." Susannah stirred no sugar into her tea. "Then you will be pleased to know the painting will appear as planned." Clementina's fingers tightened around the porcelain handle. "And you?" "I will stand beside it." The rival recovered quickly. "How brave. You sound disappointed, concerned. A quieter woman might allow her husband to manage such matters." Everard entered from the adjoining room before Susannah replied. He had clearly heard enough to understand the shape of the conversation, though not the earlier question. "A quieter woman," he said, "might still possess the alarming habit of having a mind." Clementina set down her cup. "I intended no offense." "Your intentions are becoming remarkably unfortunate." Susannah looked at Everard. He stopped. The promise had already begun, and he remembered it. Instead of continuing, he took the chair beside hers and allowed the silence to belong to her. Susannah turned back to Clementina. "The Society has expanded press access. Was that your decision?" "The exhibition deserves notice." "Then it shall have it." Clementina searched her face for some sign that the concealed letter had been found. Susannah gave her none. When the visit ended, Clementina departed with the same knowledge she had brought. The painting would appear, Susannah would attend, and something inside Kelminster House had changed. She did not know what. That uncertainty was now theirs to use. The following evening, Susannah stood in the botanical workroom, with 2 replacement mounts laid before her. One was ornate, bordered in gilt leaves. The other was plain walnut, cleanly joined and signed on the reverse by the new frame maker. Everard examined both with exaggerated gravity. The gilt one announces that the flowers have married money, and the walnut that they had excellent judgment before doing so. Susannah looked at him. "You are not taking this seriously." "I am taking you seriously. The frame has not earned the privilege. She chose the walnut." Everard helped lift the watercolor into position, but did not touch the paper. When the backing was secured, he studied the painted blossoms against the pale stone wall. "I like this one," he said, "because it is not brilliant, because the flowers do not bow merely because they grow beside stone." The words settled more deeply than praise of her skill. Susannah lowered her gaze to the painted stems. "Stone can shelter as well as confine." "Then I hope to learn the difference." At dawn on the 19th of May, before their carriage was ordered, Hawthorne entered the breakfast room carrying a handbill found outside the Winter Garden gates. Across the top, in heavy black type, were the words, "The Kelminster Bargain." Beneath them appeared the first lines of the forged letter. The handbill on the breakfast table transformed rumour into spectacle before Susannah had taken a single sip of tea. Heavy black type announced a bargain between the Duke of Kelminster and the proprietors of Belgrave Mills. Beneath the headline appeared several lines from the forged letter, followed by a reproduction of Everard's signature so exact that even Hawthorne, who had witnessed hundreds of ducal instructions, stared at it in silence. The original letter remained sealed in Mr. Bell's red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained locked in the evidence cupboard. Nothing had escaped Kelminster House through negligence. Someone had prepared the handbills before the discovery and waited for the exhibition to give the accusation an audience. Everard read the page once, then folded it without crushing it. "You do not have to go." Susannah looked across the table at him. His expression was controlled, but not calm. "We settled that yesterday. Yesterday there were rumors. Today there are printed accusations outside the gates. Which means the people responsible expect me to stay home." Mr. Bell, standing near the sideboard, held out his hand for the handbill. "This copy should be marked and preserved." "Hawthorne, who found it?" "A society porter sent it by messenger, sir. There are dozens outside the winter garden." Susannah rose. "Then we shall preserve one from the exhibition itself as well. This copy came through a messenger. I want another whose location and transfer can be witnessed." Everard watched her fasten the cuffs of her pale grey gloves. "You speak as though the morning is already under control." "It is not. That is why we must not surrender it." The carriage reached Regent's Park beneath a sky washed clear by overnight rain. Outside the winter garden, hired boys pushed handbills toward arriving guests. Gentlemen unfolded them before their wives had descended from carriages. Reporters clustered near the entrance. The glass structure glittered beyond them, filled with palms, flowering shrubs, and rows of display tables. Under any other circumstances, the place might have seemed airy and civilized. That morning, it resembled a cage built from sunlight. Hawthorne remained near the carriage as agreed. 2 Kelminster footmen took discreet positions inside. Mr. Bell carried certified copies and his notes, but no original evidence. Susannah's Wallflower watercolor hung in its new walnut frame beside a display of live specimens. The replacement backing bore the new frame maker's signature and date. No cavity lay behind it. No forged letter touched it. Yet the crowd gathered there first. "Your Grace." Lady Clementina Fane approached with a face arranged into sorrow. Her gown was lavender, subdued enough to suggest sympathy without resembling mourning. I had hoped the reports were exaggerated. Susannah met her gaze. "Which reports?" Clementina glanced toward the handbills. "Surely we need not pretend ignorance." "I am not pretending." "Then perhaps His Grace has not told you everything." Everard stepped to Susannah's side. He did not move in front of her. "Any accusation made here will be addressed before the Society trustees," he said. "Not through whispers around my wife's painting." Clementina placed one hand against her breast. "I have accused no one." "You have merely brought the audience," Susannah said. A murmur moved through the guests nearest them. One of the newspaper men advanced, handbill folded beneath his arm. "Your Grace, is it true that the letter was discovered in a work prepared by the Duchess for this exhibition?" Everard's shoulders tightened. Susannah answered before he could. A letter was discovered behind an altered frame. The watercolor itself was untouched. "And you recognized the method used to reproduce the signature?" "I recognized punctures around the ink." Clementina's voice entered softly. "Because botanical artists use pouncing." The reporter turned toward her. Clementina continued with apparent reluctance. "I do not suggest guilt. I only fear society may ask how many ladies possess the precise skill required to transfer a gentleman's hand." The accusation spread without her raising her voice. Several patrons looked from Susannah to the watercolor. A woman near the orchids whispered that the letter had been hidden in the Duchess's own picture. A mill proprietor said too loudly that intelligence could be dangerous when joined to ambition. Everard moved half a step closer, but kept his promise. "The trustees," he said. "Now." Sir Malcolm Weatherby and 2 other society trustees came forward from the central aisle. Everard required the immediate discussion to take place before them, rather than amid the crowd. The reporters remained within hearing distance, as did Clementina. Susannah asked one trustee to take a handbill directly from a boy at the entrance. Sir Malcolm sent a porter, who returned with a fresh copy. He recorded where it had been obtained and passed it to Susannah only after Mr. Bell marked the time. She held it by the edges. The printed signature appeared smooth from a distance. Under the stronger light beneath the glass roof, tiny pale points showed around the curves, not holes in the handbill itself, but part of the reproduced image. The printer had copied the punctured outline along with the signature. Susannah turned the paper. Near the lower edge, a black mark had been cut through by the trimming knife. One straight line remained, crossed by a smaller notch. "Mr. Bell." The solicitor came beside her. "What have you found?" The signature reproduction includes the same regular puncture pattern as the forged letter. Clementina smiled faintly, which only proves that the same method was used. "No," Susannah said. "It proves the image was taken from a mechanically transferred signature. It does not prove who made it." She looked at Sir Malcolm. "May I have a pencil and 2 clean sheets?" A clerk brought them. Susannah drew a simple curved stem on the first sheet. With a fine pin from her reticule, she pricked along the line by hand. The distances varied slightly, narrowing around the curve and widening where her fingers shifted. "This is the method I use for botanical work." A hand does not become a machine merely because society finds the distinction inconvenient. She laid the handbill beside the sheet. "These marks are evenly spaced through every turn. They were made by a toothed wheel." One trustee bent closer. "Could you own such a wheel?" Clementina asked. "Any artist could." Susannah did not look away from her. Any printer, decorator, leather worker, engraver, or gentleman determined to misuse one could as well. The answer did not clear her. She saw that in the faces around them. It did something more important. It broke Clementina's suggestion that botanical knowledge pointed in only one direction. Susannah touched the cropped mark at the lower edge. "This is not part of the letter." Mr. Bell examined it. "A printer's mark? A registration mark, perhaps. It has been trimmed, but not completely." One of the reporters leaned forward despite Sir Malcolm's warning glance. "Can it identify the printer?" "It may." Susannah handed the paper to the trustee rather than to Mr. Bell. "Seal this copy. Record that it came from the Winter Garden entrance and remained in society, custody until this moment." Sir Malcolm straightened, suddenly conscious that the Duchess understood evidence better than half the men surrounding her. He summoned the society secretary. The handbill was folded into a clean wrapper, sealed with the society stamp, signed across the closure, and then transferred to Mr. Bell with a written receipt. Clementina watched every movement. Her expression had lost its sorrow. "Your precision is impressive," she said, "though some may find it troubling that the Duchess understands the forgery so well." Susannah felt the old temptation to retreat. The crowd wanted discomfort. It wanted lowered eyes, a hurried departure, a husband's arm used as a shield. She gave it none of those things. Knowledge does not become guilt because it belongs to a woman. Everard's gaze rested on her, fierce and quiet. Nor does accusation become truth because it is printed in large type, he said. He offered his arm. He did not touch her until she placed her gloved hand upon it. Together they returned to the wallflower display. Guests continued to whisper. Reporters continued to write. Susannah remained beside her painting until the trustees formally closed the exhibition late that afternoon. She answered questions when they were honest and refused those shaped only to humiliate. By the time the final visitors left, society had not declared her innocent. It had simply failed to drive her away. That evening at Kelminster House, a committee advisor requested a private audience with Everard. He brought a recommendation from political allies, alarmed by the scandal. The Duke should withdraw from the Belgrave Mills inquiry. The original forged letter should never be publicly examined. Its authenticity, the advisor said, could be left forever uncertain. Susannah heard the proposal from the adjoining drawing room through an open door. Everard did not answer at once. For the first time since he had promised to stand beside her, she feared he might decide that silence was safer than truth. On the morning of the 20th of May, Everard's advisers arrived before the breakfast trays had been cleared. They came with newspapers folded beneath their arms and concern arranged carefully across their faces. By 9 o'clock, the study had filled with the smell of ink, damp wool, and political fear. Susannah sat in the adjoining drawing room with the connecting doors open, close enough to hear but not invited to the central table. The original forged letter remained sealed in Mr. Bell's red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained locked in the evidence cupboard under the solicitor's control. The handbill taken from the Winter Garden entrance had been transferred to Mr. Bell with the society's receipt. The brass die and steel pounce wheel still rested behind a purse seal in Mr. Cross's cabinet in Clerkenwell. Nothing had been lost. Nothing had yet been proved publicly. That uncertainty was what the advisers hoped to use. Sir Edwin Marsh placed one newspaper before Everard. The headline did not accuse the Duke outright. It asked questions in the manner of men who wished suspicion to spread without accepting responsibility for it. Had Kelminster promised silence at Belgrave Mills? Had the new Duchess carried political correspondence inside her artwork? Was the household attempting to suppress evidence? The committee will collapse if this continues, Sir Edwin said. 3 members have already threatened to withdraw. Lord Amberley stood near the fireplace, pale with fatigue. There is a path through this, Everard. Leave the mill inquiry temporarily. State that the letter cannot be authenticated. Say that Her Grace may have been deceived by an unknown person. Susannah's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. Deceived. The word was gentler than guilty. That was why it was more dangerous. It would turn her from conspirator into confused woman, preserve Everard's political dignity, and leave doubt attached to her name. And the original? Everard asked. Mr. Bell retains it, Sir Edwin replied. Privately. There is no benefit in displaying it before trustees or reporters. Every public examination gives the scandal another day of life. What of the handbill? A malicious print. Let it die. Everard looked toward the open doorway. His gaze met Susannah's for 1 second, then returned to the advisers. You are asking me to abandon an inquiry into unsafe working rooms because someone forged my name. We are asking you to preserve the inquiry by stepping away from it, Lord Amberley said. Another peer can continue later when this has quieted. And my wife? Sir Edwin's pause was slight but revealing. Her Grace will be protected from further humiliation. Susannah rose. The advisers turned as she entered the study. No one told her to leave, though Sir Edwin's expression suggested he wished the room possessed such courage on his behalf. Everard pulled out a chair beside the table. Susannah did not sit. "How will I be protected?" she asked. Sir Edwin folded his hands. "A statement can be prepared explaining that you discovered the paper in good faith and may not have understood how it came into your possession." "I understood exactly how it came into my possession. It fell from a cavity cut behind my painting. That level of detail need not concern the public. It concerns me." Lord Amberley adopted a kinder tone. "Your Grace, the public is rarely persuaded by technical distinctions. The more you explain pouncing, frames, and printer's marks, the more opportunity you give hostile men to twist your knowledge against you. They have already done so, which is why silence may now be merciful." Susannah looked at Everard. "Do you agree?" He did not answer quickly. The hesitation hurt more than an immediate refusal would have. "I agree that the public examination should be delayed," he said at last, "until Mr. Bell has secured more evidence." "Delayed for how long?" "Until the danger to you is reduced." "That is not a date." His jaw tightened. "No." Sir Edwin took advantage of the opening. "Then it is settled. We draft a statement. His Grace withdraws temporarily from the inquiry, and Her Grace does not appear before the Society trustees." "No," Susannah said. The word was quiet. It stopped the room. Sir Edwin blinked. "Your Grace, I will not sign a statement suggesting I was merely confused." Everard dismissed the advisers with a look, but Susannah lifted one hand. "They may stay." They proposed the words. They should hear why I refused them. She turned to Sir Edwin. "You want to preserve the Duke's reputation by placing uncertainty over mine. You call that protection because the language is polite. That is not our intention. Intent does not change the result." Lord Amberley glanced toward Everard. "This is becoming unnecessarily personal. Someone hid a forged letter in my painting, circulated it before witnesses, and used my skill as an accusation. It was personal before I entered this room." Everard rose from behind the desk. "Susannah, enough." She looked at him. The command had left his mouth before he could soften it. The advisers went still. Everard's face changed at once, but the damage remained between them. "I mean that you have made your position clear," he said, "and I have heard it. Have you? I believe you did not create the letter. That is not what I asked." His eyes narrowed with pain and frustration. "Then ask plainly." Susannah stepped closer to the table. "Do you believe me enough to let the truth survive scrutiny?" No one moved. Outside, carriage wheels passed along the wet street. Everard looked toward the newspapers, then the open door, then back to her. "I do not want London to tear you apart for sport. London will do that whether I speak or hide. Silence will only give it the final word. You think I am trying to silence you. You are asking me not to appear. You are asking me to let men describe what I found, what I know, and what was done through my work. What else should I call it?" Everard's voice dropped. "Protection. Protection that requires my absence is another form of control." Sir Edwin shifted uncomfortably. Everard turned on him. "Leave us." This time no one resisted. The advisers gathered their papers and withdrew. Mr. Bell remained only long enough for Everard to say the original evidence was not to be moved. Then the solicitor closed the study doors behind him, leaving the inner drawing-room doors open, and Hawthorne visible in the distant passage. Susannah and Everard stood on opposite sides of the table. "I am not my father," he said. "No." Her answer was immediate. "But you are repeating the lesson he taught you. Bury the scandal, preserve the name. Let someone quieter bear the uncertainty. He flinched as though she had struck the one place he kept hidden. I would never sacrifice you. Then do not decide that my courage is too dangerous for me to use. He looked down. For the first time since she had known him, his wit did not come to his rescue. If the hearing turns against you, I may not be able to stop it. I am not asking you to stop it. Then what are you asking? Stand beside me as you promised. Let me answer. Let the evidence be examined. If the truth cannot endure questions, then it is not truth. He crossed to the window, every line of his body controlled too tightly. And if the committee fails, if Belgrave Mills avoids reform because I chose public confrontation, then appoint another peer to continue the inquiry. Remove yourself if you must, but do not preserve the cause by making me the woman who was kindly persuaded not to speak. Everard turned back. You have thought this through all night, and you have decided without me. I decided what I will permit to be said in my name. The distinction struck him. She saw it, yet understanding did not become surrender at once. I am asking you to wait, he said, and I am refusing. Susannah returned to the drawing room, where her writing desk stood beneath the window. She selected a sheet of plain cream paper, not Kelminster stationery, and addressed the trustees of the Metropolitan Botanical Society in her own hand. She requested a formal public technical hearing concerning the altered frame, the forged letter, the Pounce transfer method, and the printed handbills. She offered to submit her own tools and methods to examination. She asked that independent tradesmen and the Society's records be heard. Everard remained in the study doorway as she wrote. Once that leaves the house, there is no calling it back. I know. Susannah. She sanded the page, folded it, and applied her personal seal. You believe I am innocent. I need to know whether you believe I am free. Hawthorne entered when summoned. Susannah placed the letter on the tray. Deliver this directly to Sir Malcolm Weatherby. Wait for a written receipt. The butler bowed and left. Everard did not stop him. He also did not come closer. By evening, the Society's reply arrived. The trustees would grant a public technical hearing in 5 days. Attached to the acceptance was a second message, sent urgently from Clerkenwell. Mr. Cross reported that Lord Quentin Varden had demanded the immediate return of the brass die and steel pounce wheel. He intended to collect them before dawn. By the morning of the 21st of May, Quentin Varden had failed to appear at the Clerkenwell workshop, but not because he had abandoned the tools. Mr. Cross had sent him a written notice before midnight, stating that the cabinet could not be opened while Mr. Bell's seal remained across the lock. Quentin replied, through a servant, that he would return with payment and authority before the following dawn. She intended to use every hour of it. The forged letter remained sealed in Mr. Bell's red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained locked in the evidence cupboard at Kelminster House. The brass die and steel pounce wheel remained inside Mr. Cross's sealed cabinet. The handbill taken from the Winter Garden remained in the solicitor's custody with the Society's receipt. Susannah carried none of those originals when she left Mayfair. She travelled to Fleet Street with her lady's maid opposite her, a footman outside, and Mr. Bell beside the carriage door, holding only certified copies and a drawing of the cropped registration mark. Everard did not accompany them. He had not forbidden the journey, but neither had he offered to stand beside her that morning. The distance between them had become quieter than anger and more painful than accusation. Fleet Street was already crowded when their carriage arrived. Printers' boys moved between shops with bundles tucked beneath their arms. Newspaper offices opened their doors to messengers, clerks, and men carrying rumors, as though they were legal tender. Mr. Bell led them to a lithographer whose mark resembled the black line Susannah had found at the edge of the handbill. The shop occupied a long ground-floor room with presses at the rear, stone slabs along one wall, and shelves of ink rollers darkened by years of use. The proprietor, Mr. Samuel Pike, bowed when he understood who had entered. His surprise gave way to anxiety when Mr. Bell displayed the copied registration mark. "Do you recognize this?" the solicitor asked. Mr. Pike studied it, then looked toward a locked drawer beneath his desk. "It is ours." Susannah kept her voice even. "You printed the handbills distributed outside the Winter Garden?" "I printed a political notice. I was told it concerned a public inquiry." "Who commissioned it?" He hesitated. Mr. Bell opened his notebook, but did not threaten him. Susannah waited. The presses continued behind them with a steady mechanical rhythm. At last Mr. Pike said the order came through the exhibition office. Payment was delivered by an agent acting for Lord Quentin Varden. "Did Lord Quentin come here himself?" "Once. He inspected the first proof." "When?" "On the 16th. Susannah felt the date settle into place. 3 days before the forged letter appeared publicly. The handbills were printed before the exhibition opened. "Yes, Your Grace. Before anyone outside Kelminster House could have known what the hidden letter contained." Mr. Pike's face changed. He had understood the job as scandal printing. He had not understood that the scandal had been prepared before the supposed discovery. "I was given a copied text," he said. "I did not know where it came from." "Did the copied text include the signature?" "Yes, and the puncture pattern around it. The image was supplied exactly as printed. We transferred the whole thing to stone." Susannah laid the certified drawing of the cropped mark beside the desk. "Why was your registration mark cut away?" "Lord Quentin requested it." "Did he explain why?" "He said the handbill should appear independent of any commercial printer." Mr. Bell's pencil moved. "Do you retain proofs?" The printer looked toward the locked drawer again. 1. It is our custom to keep a job proof until the account is settled." "Is the account settled?" Susannah asked. "No." That small failure of payment had preserved a second piece of evidence. Mr. Pike unlocked the drawer and removed a proof sheet wrapped around a thin board. He did not hand it over immediately. Mr. Bell first recorded the drawer, the wrapping, the time, and the presence of everyone in the room. Then Mr. Pike placed the sheet on the desk. The headline stood in heavy type. The forged passage appeared beneath it. The printer's full registration mark remained at the lower edge because the proof had not been trimmed. In the top corner, written in pencil, was the date of approval, the 16th May 1856. Beside it appeared the initials QV Susannah, read the date twice. Was anyone from the society present when distribution was discussed? Mr. Pike nodded. Lady Clementina Fane came the next morning. She did not read the text aloud, but she approved the place and hour. She said the copies must be outside the Winter Garden before the first carriages arrived. Did she say why? She said public attention had to exist before the Duke could suppress the matter. The words struck with the force of design. Clementina had not merely arranged a frame. She had arranged witnesses, timing, and outrage. Mr. Bell asked whether Mr. Pike would provide a signed account. The printer agreed, though fear tightened his mouth. "I will tell the truth," he said, "but I did not know the document was forged." "Then say precisely that," Susannah replied. "No more and no less." The proof sheet was transferred only after Mr. Pike signed a receipt stating that he surrendered it voluntarily. Mr. Bell wrapped it, sealed the packet, signed across the closure, and noted the time. The original printing ledger remained in the shop. He took only a certified extract showing the order, payment agent, and approval date. Nothing else moved. When Susannah returned to Kelminster House in the late afternoon, Everard was waiting in the small drawing room adjoining his study. The doors stood open. Hawthorne remained visible in the passage, while her maid withdrew to a chair near the far window. Everard did not ask whether the journey had been difficult. He asked what she had learned. Susannah told him everything in order. She described the proof sheet, the date, Quentin's initials, Clementina's approval of distribution, and the printer's ignorance of the full scheme. Everard listened without interruption. When she finished, he looked toward Mr. Bell. "The proof remains sealed?" "In my possession, Your Grace. And the shop ledger?" "Still with Mr. Pike. I have a certified extract." Everard nodded. "Good." Mr. Bell withdrew to the study to secure the new packet, leaving the inner doors open. For several seconds, Everard said nothing. Susannah had once found his silence reassuring. Now it felt like a room she could no longer enter without invitation. "You were right," he said, "about the hearing, about me." He stepped closer but stopped beyond reach. "I called silence protection because I was afraid of what public scrutiny might do to you. That was not the whole truth." Susannah waited. He did not look away. "I was also afraid of what it might do to my name, my committee, and the work I believed I could control. The statement Sir Edwin proposed would have kept suspicion from settling fully on me. By allowing it to remain on you, the admission cost him." She heard that in the care with which he spoke. "You did not accuse me of forging the letter. No, I did something more respectable and nearly as cruel. I believed you, then tried to decide how much truth you were permitted to defend." Susannah's throat tightened, but she did not rescue him from the words. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because an apology that hides its ugliest part is only another form of management." The humor he usually used against discomfort did not appear. "I am sorry, Susannah. I should not have ordered you to wait. I should not have asked you to disappear from a hearing about evidence found through your work. I should not have treated your courage as a danger I was entitled to contain." She had wanted him to understand. Hearing him name the harm did not erase it, but it changed its shape. "The hearing may still cost you the Mills Committee. I know. Your allies may withdraw. I know. Will you support it anyway?" Everard's answer did not come quickly. That mattered. A fast promise would have been easy. "I will not ask you to cancel it," he said, "but I have not yet done enough to claim that I stand beside you." Susannah respected the honesty, even as it hurt. "Then decide before the trustees convene." "I will." He did not touch her. He did not ask forgiveness. He allowed the distance to remain because she had not chosen to close it. A knock sounded from the passage. Hawthorne entered, carrying a message sealed in plain brown wax. "From Mr. Cross in Clerkenwell, Your Grace." Everard opened it, read the first line, and handed it directly to Susannah. Quentin had sent a second demand. He would arrive at the engraver's workshop before dawn with the full unpaid balance, and intended to remove both the brass die and the steel pounce wheel himself. Before dawn on the 22nd May, Clerkenwell seemed made of shuttered windows, wet stone, and the dim glow of lamps carried by men who preferred not to be observed. Everard arrived at Mr. Cross's workshop with Mr. Bell and 2 trustees of the Metropolitan Botanical Society, Sir Malcolm Weatherby and Mr. Alden Price. Susannah remained at Kelminster House as they had agreed. A pre-dawn confrontation in a tradesman's shop would expose her to unnecessary physical risk and give Quentin another chance to call her presence improper. She had accepted the decision because it preserved her authority rather than replacing it. She had also required one condition: every word spoken, every object moved, and every change in custody would be recorded before anyone returned to Mayfair. The original forged letter remained sealed in Mr. Bell's red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained locked in the evidence cupboard adjoining Everard's study. The Society handbill and Fleet Street proof sheet remained separately wrapped and signed in the solicitor's care. The brass die and steel pounce wheel still rested inside Mr. Cross's cabinet. Behind the paper seal Mr. Bell had placed across its lock. Nothing waited unguarded. Mr. Cross admitted them through the side door. His apprentice had not yet arrived, and no forge had been lit. The work smelled of cold metal and lamp oil. "The seal hasn't been disturbed, Mr." Cross said, pointing toward the cabinet. Mr. Bell examined the paper strip. His signature still crossed the join, unbroken. Sir Malcolm and Mr. Price each inspected it before Mr. Bell entered the time in his notebook. "No one opens that cabinet unless all 5 of us are present," the solicitor said. Everard stood near the workbench, his hat and gloves still in hand. "And when Varden arrives, he will be told the tools are under disputed custody," Mr. Bell replied. "He may state his claim. He may not remove them. He will dislike that. Dislike is not a legal instrument." The knock came 20 minutes later. It was not hesitant. Quentin entered with a leather purse in one hand and irritation already visible beneath his composure. He stopped when he saw Everard and the trustees. "This is unexpected. Only if you expected, Mr. Cross, to surrender evidence in darkness," Everard said. Quentin's expression barely shifted. "Evidence? I came to settle an unpaid account and collect my property." He placed the purse on the counter. Banknotes and several gold sovereigns lay inside. Mr. Cross did not touch them. "You ordered the tools destroyed after correction," the engraver said. "I changed my mind. After handbills reproducing my signature appeared outside the Winter Garden," Everard asked. Quentin looked toward Sir Malcolm. "I assume the Society has not begun holding trials in workshops." "We have begun witnessing the preservation of materials connected to a public hearing," Sir Malcolm replied. "Nothing more." Mr. Bell opened his notebook. "State your claim clearly, Lord Quentin." Quentin removed his gloves with deliberate care. "The brass die and tracing wheel are my commission. I ordered them. I have brought the balance owed. Mr. Cross has no right to retain them." "You commissioned a die bearing the Kelminster crest," Mr. Bell said. "Under whose authority?" "The Duke's former correspondence office required formal devices from time to time." Everard's voice remained quiet. "You left my service last year." "The commission was connected to papers prepared earlier. Then why order it in February of this year?" Quentin's eyes flicked once toward the solicitor's notebook. "A private invitation project." "Show us the invitations," Mr. Price said. Quentin turned to him. "I did not know a botanical trustee possessed such interest in stationery. I possess an interest in men who answer simple questions with elaborate contempt." Mr. Cross lowered his gaze, hiding what might have been satisfaction. Quentin placed one hand beside the purse. "Open the cabinet. You will see nothing criminal. A crest die and a wheel used for transferring borders do not constitute conspiracy." "Then you should have no objection to their examination at the hearing," Everard said. "I object to my property being seized by men acting under ducal pressure. Everard did not move closer. "The tools will not be given to me." Mr. Bell addressed the trustees. "You heard Lord Quentin identify them as his commission." "We did," Sir Malcolm said. Mr. Price nodded. Quentin's jaw tightened. He had spoken too quickly. Mr. Bell recorded the phrase exactly, then asked Mr. Cross to produce the original workshop account book. The engraver laid it on the counter and opened to the February entry. The brass die dimensions matched the Kelminster crest. The wheel's tooth spacing appeared beneath it. Quentin's signature authorized both commissions. A second notation, also signed, ordered correction, followed by destruction. "You called the tools yours," Mr. Bell said. "You signed the commission. You later ordered them destroyed. Yet you now say they concern invitations you cannot produce. I say you are constructing suspicion from ordinary trade. That will be for the hearing to consider." Mr. Bell cut the paper seal only after the trustees witnessed its condition. Mr. Cross unlocked the cabinet. The wrapped brass die and steel wheel lay exactly where they had rested on the 16th of May. He placed both on a clean felt pad without handing them to Everard. Mr. Bell compared the objects with the earlier certified descriptions. The burr on the die's lower scroll remained. One tooth of the pounce wheel showed the slight catch Mr. Cross had recorded. Nothing had been polished, repaired, or altered. Mr. Bell prepared a full inventory. Mr. Cross read it. Sir Malcolm and Mr. Price read it. Quentin was invited to read it and refused. "You may note that refusal," he said. "I already have," Mr. Bell replied. The die was wrapped in separate cloth, tied, sealed, and signed across the knot. The wheel was treated the same way. Mr. Cross then signed a voluntary transfer, placing both objects in Mr. Bell's custody until the society hearing and any later magistrate's review. The tools never passed through Everard's hands. Quentin watched the final seal cool. "You believe this proves a forged letter?" "Not by itself," Everard said. "Truth rarely depends on one convenient object." "And when your wife's own knowledge points back toward her?" Quentin asked. "The cruelty was measured, intended to find the fracture between them." Everard's expression did not change. "Then she will answer for her knowledge, and you will answer for your commission." Quentin gathered his gloves. "You are risking your committee, your name, and your marriage for an exhibition quarrel." "No. Someone else risked them by manufacturing a lie." Mr. Bell closed his case. "You are free to leave, Lord Quentin. You are also formally notified that these materials will be submitted to a magistrate after the society hearing if the testimony supports forgery or conspiracy." Quentin looked at each witness in turn. For one moment his polished calm gave way to naked calculation. Then he bowed. "I shall attend the hearing." "I expected nothing less," Everard said. By noon, the sealed objects had reached Kelminster House in Mr. Bell's carriage, accompanied by both trustees. They were taken to the botanical workroom, where Susannah waited with clean paper, her hand-pricking needle, a ruler, and the society handbill still sealed in its separate wrapper. Everard entered last. He gave her the full account before Mr. Bell opened any package. He repeated Quentin's exact words, including his attempt to describe the tools as a private invitation commission. He did not omit the insult directed at her knowledge. He did not soften his own reply. "You told him I would answer for it," Susannah said. "Yes, not that you would answer for me." "No." Their eyes met. The difference stood quietly between them. Mr. Bell opened the wheel package after recording the witnesses and time. Mr. Cross had provided a fresh strip of the same grade of scrap paper used for workshop tests. Susannah did not touch the tool. until Mr. Bell placed it on the table and gave permission. She rolled it once across the strip. The steel teeth made a line of punctures, so even they seemed almost printed. She laid a measured tracing beside the copied pattern from the forged signature. Mr. Bell checked the intervals with a divider. Sir Malcolm checked again. The spacing matched. Not approximately. Precisely. Everard looked at Susannah, but he did not claim triumph. "What does that establish?" he asked. "That this wheel could have made the punctures around the forged signature," she said. "Not who rolled it, not who supplied the original signature, not who hid the letter. We still need the chain." Mr. Bell nodded, and Clementina may still say Quentin acted alone. A footman entered, carrying a sealed packet from Soho. It contained the frame-maker's final certified statement. Mr. Bell broke the outer delivery seal and read the first lines aloud. Lady Clementina Fane had not merely ordered the hidden cavity. She had personally instructed the exhibition porter to admit a newspaper writer to Susannah's frame before the opening, while the painting was still expected to conceal the letter. By the morning of the 23rd May, the case against Quentin Varden no longer depended upon one clever observation or one suspicious object. It had become a chain. Mr. Bell arranged the evidence across 3 written schedules in the botanical workroom at Kelminster House. The original forged letter remained sealed inside his red leather portfolio. The altered frame remained secured in the evidence cupboard until transport to the hearing. The brass die and steel pounce wheel rested in separate sealed packets under his custody. The Winter Garden handbill, the Fleet Street proof sheet, the frame maker's certified extract, and the printer's signed account were each wrapped, marked, and recorded. Nothing changed hands without a receipt. Nothing entered the case without a known source. Susannah stood at the long work table while Mr. Bell read the schedules aloud. First, physical manufacture, the paper, the transferred signature, the dry embossed crest, the pounce wheel, and the brass die. Second, exhibition placement, the altered frame, the hidden cavity, the delivery arrangements, and access before the opening. Third, publication and motive, the proof sheet, the handbill distribution, and the financial interests connected to Belgrave Mills. Everard stood opposite her, one hand resting beside the sealed wheel packet without touching it. Since the morning in Clerkenwell, he had told her every development before reporting it to his political advisers. The change was not dramatic. It was more difficult than drama. It was repeated. "The porter's statement?" Susannah asked. Mr. Bell lifted another sheet. "Received this morning. The society porter confirms that Lady Clementina instructed him to admit a newspaper writer before the exhibition opened. The man was directed specifically to your frame, not to the general display." "Did the writer see the letter?" "The porter cannot swear to that. He left the writer and Lord Quentin near the display for several minutes." Everard's expression tightened. Enough time to confirm the hiding place and prepare the story. Enough time to support that inference, Mr. Bell corrected. Everard inclined his head. Quite right. The solicitor continued. The Soho frame maker had certified that Clementina's steward ordered the cavity under the pretense of concealing a prize certificate. Mr. Pike had signed a second statement, confirming that Clementina approved the hour and location of handbill distribution. The broker's memorandum linked both Quentin's credit and the Fane family income to Belgrave Mills. No single item proved every part of the conspiracy. Together, they formed a design too deliberate to dismiss as coincidence. A knock sounded at the open door. Hawthorne entered carrying a letter on a silver tray, delivered by Lord Quentin Varden's servant, Your Grace. He requested that it be placed directly in his Grace's hands. The envelope bore Quentin's seal. Everard looked at Susannah before taking it. Did the servant wait? No, Your Grace. Everard did not break the seal. He carried the letter across the room and placed it before Susannah. I will not open this without you. She looked at him. It is addressed to you. So was the forged letter. His voice held no humor. I have learned not to confuse private address with private consequence. Mr. Bell withdrew to the adjoining study, leaving the inner doors open. Hawthorne remained visible in the passage. Susannah touched the envelope, but did not lift it. Open it, she said. Everard broke the seal and unfolded the page so they could read it together. Quentin's offer was written with polished restraint. If Everard cancelled the public hearing, Quentin would leave England before the end of the week. Clementina would withdraw from the Metropolitan Botanical Society and cease all public comment. The political committee investigating Belgrave Mills would retain enough support to continue under Everard's leadership. No further handbills would appear. No additional documents would reach the press. At the bottom, Quentin called the arrangement a means of protecting the Duchess from needless scrutiny. Susannah read that phrase twice. He has borrowed your former argument. Everard did not defend himself. Yes, he believes it will persuade you, because it nearly did once. He turned the page over, though nothing was written there. If I accept, he escapes legal examination. Clementina keeps the appearance of voluntary withdrawal. The Mills inquiry survives, and the truth about you remains disputed. The truth about both of us. No. Everard's gaze met hers. My title would recover. Your name would remain tied to doubt. I will not call that mutual survival. Mr. Bell returned when summoned. Everard handed him the letter. Record it. Quentin offers to leave England in exchange for cancellation of the hearing. Do you wish to reply? The solicitor asked. Yes. Inform him that the hearing will proceed. Inform the trustees that I support it without condition. If my political allies withdraw, another peer will carry the Mills inquiry forward. Mr. Bell's expression remained professional, but his relief was visible. I will prepare the notices at once. By late afternoon, 2 committee allies had already withdrawn their support. Sir Edwin Marsh sent a cold letter warning that Everard was sacrificing years of reform work to a domestic scandal. Everard read it in Susannah's presence, folded it, and placed it with the political correspondence rather than the legal evidence. He is wrong about one thing, Susannah said. Only one. This is not domestic, merely because a wife was chosen as the weapon. Everard looked toward the conservatory beyond the open doors. I once thought power meant keeping every danger outside the walls. Walls can hold danger in as easily as they keep it out. You said something like that about stone. I remember. He moved nearer, then stopped at the same respectful distance he had kept since his apology. I need to say this before tomorrow. Not after the room applauds you. Not after the evidence makes it safe. Susannah waited. I was drawn to your quietness before I understood it, he said. Then I admired your judgment. Then your courage. Somewhere between the letter falling from that frame and you refusing to leave the winter garden, admiration became something I could not treat as detached. His breath altered, though his voice remained steady. I loved your courage, Susannah, yet when that courage frightened me, I tried to manage it. I treated the very quality I loved as though it were a threat I had the right to contain. She had not expected the word loved before the hearing. even used in that unfinished form. It entered the silence carefully, without demanding an answer. "I do not need you never to be afraid," she said. "Trust has never required that. What does it require? That you do not turn fear into an order for me." Everard lowered his eyes for a moment. "I did. Yes, and I am sorry. I know." He looked at her hand resting on the work table. He did not reach for it. That restraint, once merely good manners, had become an act of understanding. Susannah closed the distance herself and placed her hand in his. His fingers folded around hers with the same care he had shown in the carriage from Clerkenwell, but the meaning had changed. Then he had offered comfort without knowing whether he could honor her freedom. Now the offer carried cost. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will stand beside you. I will not speak before you finish. I will not bargain with the truth, even if the committee is lost. And if the room turns against me, I will believe you without taking your voice." The answer reached the place his earlier apology had not. Susannah's shoulders loosened. Everard held her hand for several breaths, then asked, "May I hold you?" He did not say protect. He did not assume. Susannah stepped toward him. His arms came around her slowly, leaving her room to refuse even after consent. She rested her cheek against his coat and felt the controlled rise of his breath. Nothing about the embrace was possessive. It was an acknowledgement that neither of them stood untouched by what had happened. Everard lowered his face near her hair, but did not kiss her. Susannah was grateful. A kiss would have asked the moment to become an ending, when the truth still waited for its public cost. They remained together until the clock in the corridor struck 6. Then Susannah stepped back by her own choice. On the morning of the 26th of May, before the carriage came to take them to the Winter Garden, Susannah entered the botanical workroom alone. Her late mother's herbarium lay open beneath the window. The pressed wallflower on its page had faded from gold to muted brown, but its 4 petals remained whole. Susannah touched the protective paper, then closed the book. Everard waited at the door without entering. She looked at him and said, "Today they may examine everything except my worth." The Winter Garden had never seemed so bright. On the 26th of May, sunlight struck the glass roof and poured across the long central aisle, illuminating every chair, every folded paper, and every face that had come to judge whether a duchess had manufactured a lie or uncovered one. The Metropolitan Botanical Society had arranged the hearing at a raised table beneath the Eastern Gallery. Sir Malcolm Weatherby sat with 4 trustees. Political observers occupied the first rows. Reporters stood behind them with notebooks ready. The Soho frame maker, Mr. Cross the engraver, Mr. Pike the printer, the society porter, Mr. Bell, Quentin Varden, and Lady Clementina Fane had all been admitted under written notice. The venue belonged to the society. Everard could not dismiss the trustees, choose the witnesses, or control what the press recorded. Susannah was glad of that. Mr. Bell arrived with the evidence in separate sealed packages. The forged letter remained inside the red leather portfolio until the hearing opened. The altered frame came wrapped and labelled from the evidence cupboard at Kelminster House. The brass die and steel pounce wheel remained in the packets sealed after Clerkenwell. The Winter Garden handbill and Fleet Street proof sheet carried their original receipts. Nothing had changed custody without a written transfer. Everard stood beside Susannah near the front table. He did not speak first. Clementina did. She wore pearl grey silk and the expression of a woman grieved by vulgar necessity. "No one regrets this public ugliness more than I do," she said. "But the facts are disturbing. the letter was found inside the Duchess's own painting. Her Grace possesses specialized knowledge of pouncing. She understood the signature method before any gentleman in the room did. A new wife, anxious to prove influence over a powerful husband, might have imagined that exposing a threat would secure his gratitude. A murmur moved through the seats. Quentin sat behind her, composed enough to appear bored. Susannah watched him only once, his right thumb pressed against the side of his forefinger in a repeated motion, as though feeling the teeth of an invisible wheel. Sir Malcolm turned to Susannah. "Your Grace, you may answer." "I will not begin by asking this room to believe me," Susannah said. "I will begin by asking it to look." She placed 2 clean sheets on the demonstration table. Her own hand-pricking needle lay beside them. Mr. Bell opened the packet containing the steel wheel only after reading the custody entry aloud. He placed the tool on a felt pad. Susannah drew the same curved stem on both sheets. On the first, she pricked the line by hand. The holes tightened where her fingers adjusted around the curve and widened along the straighter section. On the second, with the trustees watching, she rolled the steel wheel once along a traced line. It left a perfect sequence of evenly spaced punctures. "This is the distinction Lady Clementina calls a feminine trick," Susannah said. A hand breathes. A wheel repeats. Mr. Bell opened the red leather portfolio. He did not give the forged letter to Susannah. He placed it beneath a weighted glass sheet, so the signature could be examined without unnecessary handling. Sir Malcolm used a divider to compare the punctures around Everard's copied name with those made by the steel wheel. Mr. Price repeated the measurement. "The spacing is identical," Sir Malcolm said. Quentin leaned forward. "Identical spacing proves only that the same sort of tool was used. Such wheels are not rare." "This one was commissioned by you," Mr. Cross said. His voice trembled once, then steadied. Mr. Bell opened the certified workshop extract. Mr. Cross identified his original entry. Quentin's dimensions, the wheel spacing, and the later instruction ordering the tool destroyed after correction. The sealed brass die was opened next. Its lower scroll bore the same small burr recorded in Clerkenwell. Mr. Cross made a fresh impression on blank paper. The crest emerged with a slight pressure distortion beneath the coronet. Mr. Bell placed it beside the dry embossed crest on the forged letter. The distortion matched. "Lord Quentin supplied the design," Mr. Cross said. "He said it was for private invitations. He never showed written authority from His Grace." Quentin rose. "An unauthorized commission is not proof that I used it on that letter." "No," Susannah said. "That is why the frame matters." Mr. Bell removed the altered botanical frame from its wrapping. The opened backing remained intact. The new brass tack Susannah had lifted lay in a small labeled envelope. The Soho frame maker identified the shallow recess and the order number. His certified statement was read aloud. Lady Clementina's steward had instructed him to create a hidden cavity under the pretense of preserving a prize certificate. Quentin had later measured the recess against a folded sheet of paper. Clementina smiled with strained patience. "My steward arranged many details. I did not inspect every craftsman's instruction. The society porter stood when called. You inspected this one, my lady. You told me to admit a newspaper writer before opening and take him to the Duchess's frame. I asked that the exhibition receive proper notice. You named that frame, my lady. You said it would contain the morning's true attraction." The words travelled through the glasshouse with greater force than a shout. Clementina turned toward Quentin, but he did not look at her. "Mr. Pike then identified the sealed proof sheet from his Fleet Street shop. Mr. Bell opened it and displayed the full registration mark, the headline, the copied text, and the approval date. The 16th May, 1856, 3 days before the handbills appeared outside the Winter Garden. Lord Quentin's agent paid the deposit, Mr. Pike said. Lord Quentin approved the first proof. Lady Clementina approved where and when the copies were to be distributed. You printed a political notice, Clementina said. You cannot know what I believed about its truth. I know you approved it before the hidden letter was supposed to be discovered, Susannah replied. She stepped closer to the trustee's table, but did not raise her voice. If the letter was discovered by chance, why were copies printed before the frame entered the exhibition? No one answered. The silence altered the room. It no longer belonged to those who had dismissed her. Mr. Bell read the broker's memorandum, showing Quentin's heavy credit exposure to Belgrave Mills and the Fane family trust's dependence upon dividends from the same consortium. The motive did not stand alone. It connected to the method, the placement, and the publication. Quentin rose again. Lady Clementina did not know the full plan. I commissioned the tools. I handled the printer. Her involvement was social, not criminal. Clementina's face lost color. Quentin. He ignored her. Susannah looked at him. Then why did her steward order the cavity? Why did she arrange access to the frame? Why did she approve distribution before the exhibition opened? Clementina stood. Because someone had to protect the society from scandal. Because the Duchess's skill made her dangerous. Because a woman who understands how evidence is made can also manufacture it. Knowledge is not guilt, Susannah said, and ignorance is not innocence when it has been deliberately performed. Sir Malcolm called the room to order. The trustees withdrew for less than 20 minutes. When they returned, the findings were read formally. Lady Clementina Fane was expelled from society patronage, removed from the exhibition committee, and barred from directing future society events. A public report would state that the letter had been planted through exhibition arrangements, and that the printed accusations had been prepared before the supposed discovery. Quentin Varden's commissions, financial interest, and attempt to reclaim the tools would be forwarded with the evidence to a magistrate. Everard did not speak until Susannah had completed every answer, and the trustees had issued their findings. Then he stepped forward. I have one statement. The room quieted. My wife does not require my title to make her credible. My title requires her courage if it is to remain worthy of respect. He looked toward the reporters. I also attempted to delay this hearing. I called that protection. It was fear. I believed the Duchess. Yet I tried to decide how much truth she was permitted to defend. That failure was mine. Susannah felt the room turn toward her. But Everard did not ask her to absolve him. He continued. Quentin was dismissed permanently from every Kelminster position. Every recommendation and trust appointment connected to the Duke would be withdrawn. Mr. Bell would submit the forged letter, frame, tools, printing proof, handbill, and witness statements to the magistrate that afternoon. Everard would step aside from leadership of the Belgrave Mills inquiry, so another peer could continue it without suspicion that the Duke was protecting himself. The mills will still be examined, he said. The workers will not pay for what was done to my name. By the time the hearing ended, reporters were already sending messengers toward Fleet Street. Clementina left without looking at Susannah. Quentin remained with Mr. Bell long enough to receive formal notice regarding the evidence. Then, departed under the eyes of men who no longer mistook polish for innocence. Everard found Susannah in a side gallery overlooking the palms. The doors remained open. Hawthorne and her maid stood at a respectful distance. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Everard said, "I love you, Susannah, not because you saved my name, but because you would not let either of us live beneath a lie." Her breath caught, not from surprise alone, but from the absence of demand in his voice. He offered love without asking it to erase what had happened. Susannah stepped closer. "I love you, Everard, but I will never become smaller to make love feel safer." "I know." His eyes held hers. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." She closed the final distance herself. His hand rose slowly to her cheek, warm and careful. The kiss was restrained at first, almost reverent, then deepened only when she leaned into him and placed one hand against his coat. There was no audience in it, no victory, and no claim. It was a promise made after truth, not instead of it. When they parted, Everard rested his forehead lightly against hers. Beyond the gallery, the wallflowers stood beneath the glass, no longer at the edge of anyone's attention. By the first week of July, London had discovered that scandal grew less fascinating. Once truth acquired dates, signatures, and consequences. 6 weeks had passed since the hearing at the Winter Garden. The forged letter, altered frame, brass die, steel pounce wheel, proof sheet, handbill, and witness statements remained in legal custody. None had returned to Kelminster House. After reviewing the evidence, the magistrate had committed Quentin Varden for trial on charges connected to forgery, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. His holdings in Belgrave Mills had been frozen while creditors and legal claims were examined. The newspapers that once printed questions in large type now printed corrections in smaller but permanent columns, naming Susannah Mowbray as the woman who had discovered the deception and demonstrated its manufacture before independent witnesses. Lady Clementina Fane had left London before the season ended. She had lost her society patronage, her exhibition committee position, and the invitations that had once arrived, faster than her servants could answer them. She now lived with a married sister in Derbyshire, where distance could soften gossip but not restore authority. The Metropolitan Botanical Society published its formal findings without flattering the Duke or excusing its own failures. It admitted that committee access had been misused, that the Duchess's painting had been altered under false instructions, and that printed accusations had been prepared before the supposed discovery of the letter. The Belgrave Mills inquiry continued under Lord Halberton, a peer with no financial tie to Kelminster. Witnesses who feared dismissal or loss of lodging received protection through the committee rather than through Everard alone. Susannah approved of that distinction. Charity offered by one powerful man could disappear with his mood. Procedure once honestly built could outlast him. On a warm morning beneath the restored glass roof at Kelminster House, the conservatory opened its doors again. No breakfast tables divided the room. No clever women stood beside the wallflowers waiting to turn quietness into ridicule. Instead, botanical studies hung along the central walk in plain walnut frames. Each work bore the artist's name, her county, and the amount of the commission paid for it. Some had been painted by gentlewomen whose fathers had died with debts. Others came from widows who could draw with precision, but had never been permitted to call skill an occupation. Susannah had established the exhibition as an annual program, funded jointly by society subscriptions and private patrons. Payment was made directly to the artists. no family guardian received it first. No woman was required to present poverty as entertainment. Everard had offered money and introductions, but he had not named the program, chosen its artists, or placed the ducal crest above the entrance. Susannah had insisted upon that. The sign near the guest book read simply, "The Kelminster Botanical Commissions, directed by Her Grace the Duchess of Kelminster." The first carriages arrived before 11. Susannah stood near the central display in a gown of soft blue-grey silk, not hidden among the plants, yet not transformed into a woman who enjoyed being watched. She still preferred the light near the eastern windows. She still listened before speaking. Her quietness had not been cured because it had never been an illness. Sir Malcolm Weatherby entered first and signed the guest book beneath her authority. He paused beside a study of foxgloves, painted by a clergyman's widowed daughter from Sussex. "The vein work is exceptional," he said. "It is," Susannah replied. "Mrs. Vale uses a dry brush after the first wash. The Society has commissioned 3 more plates from her. A sound choice." Sir Malcolm glanced toward the front of the conservatory. "His Grace is not receiving?" "No." Everard stood among the invited patrons halfway down the room, speaking with a printer's wife about a series of fern studies. He wore no expression of sacrifice. He did not wait at the entrance to introduce Susannah, as though her work required translation through his rank. When the trustees asked questions, he directed them to her. When a patron praised him for allowing the program, he answered, "The Duchess did not require permission. She required cooperation." Susannah heard it from across the room and looked toward him. Everard caught her gaze. His smile was private despite the crowd. More guests arrived, including several women who had once laughed at Clementina's remark beside the wallflowers. They signed the book. They asked Susannah about commissions. One even confessed that she had underestimated the usefulness of botanical drawing. Susannah did not offer easy absolution. "Usefulness was never the measure," she said. "Value existed before anyone important recognized it." The woman colored, then inclined her head. That was enough. No public apology could return every hour a quiet woman had spent being treated as background. Yet altered conduct had more worth than elegant regret. Near midday, Susannah addressed the room for less than 5 minutes. She thanked the Society for publishing its findings, named each commissioned artist, and explained that future selections would be judged by skill rather than household influence. She did not tell the audience how humiliating the winter garden had been. She did not turn pain into a performance so they could admire her survival. When she finished, applause moved beneath the glass roof. Everard remained among the listeners. He did not step forward until others had spoken to her first. Only after the final patron departed did he join her beside the wallflower watercolor in its plain walnut frame. "You were formidable," he said. "I spoke for 4 minutes. The House of Lords has suffered longer speeches with considerably less purpose." "You promised not to make political comparisons during my exhibition." "I promised not to make unflattering ones." She looked at him, and the smile came without effort. Their marriage had changed in small daily ways since the hearing. Everard no longer sent instructions when a question would serve. Susannah no longer assumed that affection must be earned through usefulness. They disagreed without turning rank into a weapon. They also laughed more, though never when truth required seriousness. Everard glanced toward the last carriage disappearing beyond the conservatory doors. "We should decide about August. Fallowdean Park, I would like to return." I would also like you to choose whether we go." Susannah looked around the conservatory. 2 artists were expected in London before the end of the month, and the Society had asked her to review a new set of alpine studies. "I want to remain here through July," she said. "Then we can go to Kent for August and September." "Done. You did not ask about the committee session. Lord Halberton can survive without me for 4 weeks. That confidence is new. It is exhausting, but I am practicing." He offered his arm. Susannah took it, and they walked into the adjoining botanical workroom after the servants opened the doors. Her mother's herbarium waited on the long table beneath the window. The old pressed wallflower lay on its page, faded from gold to brown, its petals delicate but whole beneath the protective paper. Beside the book stood a small glass of water holding 1 fresh wallflower cut from the conservatory. Everard stopped before touching either object. "I brought this," he said. "I was uncertain whether it belonged in the book or should remain in the garden." Susannah looked at the new blossom. Its color was deep gold, brighter than the specimen her mother had pressed years before. "You remembered the page." "I remember more than I once permitted myself to notice." He lifted the flower only after she nodded. "Would you like to keep it?" "Yes." Together they prepared a second space on the herbarium sheet. Susannah arranged the petals and stem with a fine needle, then lowered the protective paper. Beneath the old specimen, she wrote its place and approximate year in her precise hand. Beneath the new one, she passed the pen to Everard. His letters were broader and less controlled. He wrote, "Kelminster House, July 1856. Placed here by choice." Susannah read the final words and looked at him. Botanical notation rarely includes philosophy. Then botanical notation has been deprived. She set down the pen and reached for his hand. Everard closed his fingers around hers. The gesture no longer felt like a promise waiting to be tested. It felt like the result of one kept. "I love you," he said, "even when I interfere with classification." "Especially then," she replied, "though I reserve the right to correct your labels." "I would expect nothing less." Susannah rose onto her toes and kissed him. He answered with the same care he had shown in the side gallery after the hearing. But there was no fear beneath the tenderness now. When they parted, the herbarium remained open beside them. 1 wallflower had survived years of pressure and darkness. The other had been placed there fresh, freely chosen, and named by 2 hands. Susannah had never needed to become the rose of a ballroom. She had needed only to remain fully herself, and to be loved by a man wise enough to understand that wallflowers, too, turned toward the light.